Hello, and welcome to the Berkowitz and Hanna Love of the Law podcast. My name is Russ Berkowitz, and I will be your moderator during the podcast today. My guest today is Kelly Ferraro, an attorney at Berkowitz and Hanna. Kelly has been with the firm for almost 15 years since graduating from college, first as a personal injury paralegal, and now as an attorney who practices in the areas of medical malpractice, personal injury, and complex litigation matters. Today, Kelly and I will discuss her journey on becoming an attorney and the role she plays at the firm, including her involvement with the NFL brain concussion class action, which she has spent a tremendous amount of time representing over 150 retired NFL football players who sustained permanent injuries during the course of their football careers as a result of repetitive trauma to their heads. Finally, I'm looking forward to hearing Kelly share with us what it's like balancing such a time-consuming job and balancing home life, especially since she's married to another attorney. So without further ado, I welcome Kelly to the show. Hi, Kelly. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Thanks for being part of the show. We've got a lot of ground to cover today, so let's dive right into things. As I stated during my introduction, you've been with the firm for almost 15 years. Seems like a long time, but it seems like it's gone pretty quickly, hasn't it?
Yes.
When year did you graduate from college?
I graduated in 2009.
And then I think that our law firm was actually your first job out of college, correct?
Yes, it was.
You started as a paralegal, and now you're an attorney. Can you share with the audience what was it that interested you in the law in the first place that led you to apply for the job here as a paralegal?
Yes. So when I was pursuing my undergraduate degree, I studied abroad in France. And while there, I took an international law class and became fascinated with the law and its impact on society. And after I graduated college, I applied for the paralegal position at the firm because I admired the firm's advocacy for helping individuals in need.
And what areas of the law did you work on as a paralegal when you first came aboard?
I worked as a paralegal in the areas of personal injury and medical malpractice.
And for how long were you a paralegal before you went back to law school?
I was a paralegal for 4 years here before going back to law school.
And I'd like the audience to know, you were a great paralegal. You worked closely with me and one of the other partners, and you were excellent. But at some point, if I remember, you approached me and said, I really want to go to law school. And can you tell us what was it that started getting you thinking about going to law school in the first place?
Yeah, well, I truly enjoyed my role as a paralegal at the firm. And then when I began considering law school, I considered law school because I working closely with you and the other attorneys at our office and seeing the direct impact that you had on clients' lives really inspired me. I realized that I wanted to take a more active role in advocating for clients and influencing outcomes.
And what year did you start law school?
I started law school in 2013.
And if I remember, the good news for us is that you went to school locally. You went to Pace University, correct?
Correct.
And you also, after that first year, which was a very, as everyone that goes to law school knows, a very involved year with school, you started working here as a law clerk.
Yes, I did.
And then subsequently, after you graduated from law school, you became an attorney here.
Yes.
How would you characterize, moving forward a little bit, how would you characterize your practice in terms of what type of cases that you've been working on since you transitioned from paralegal to attorney?
Well, I've been fortunate to work on several different types of cases as an attorney at the firm, including personal injury cases, medical malpractice cases, but also cases involving the Vaccine Injury Compensation Fund and cases involving the NFL concussion settlement.
And can you share with us what is the vaccination fund that you just referenced?
Sure. So the Vaccine Injury Compensation Fund is a fund by the U.S. government. There is an amount that's put into the fund with each vaccine given to individuals. And if an individual has an adverse reaction to a vaccine and it's covered under the Vaccine Injury Compensation Fund, they're entitled to money damages for their injuries.
And is that, do you go through the federal government for that on behalf of clients?
You go through the Court of Federal Claims, and you actually have to be admitted into the court.
That's part of the federal government, though, right?
Yes.
And with these vaccination cases, can somebody file a lawsuit instead of doing the application for the fund, or has the fund become the exclusive remedy for someone that sustained an injury as a result of an adverse reaction from a vaccine?
It's the exclusive remedy, filing a claim with the Vaccine Injury Compensation Fund.
And what kinds of either vaccines or reactions did you see since you've been doing that kind of work?
Yes, so we've seen a variety of injuries caused by vaccines, including Guillain-Barré syndrome, shoulder injuries, injuries involving certain types of skin disorders. But most of the cases that we had involved Guillain-Barré syndrome and shoulder injury cases.
But at least most of the work that you're doing here, since you work with me on a lot of the cases, is you're doing a lot of medical malpractice.
Yes.
In addition to some personal injury cases, right?
Yes. Yep.
And one of the qualities that I've always admired of you as a litigator, since you become a lawyer, is that your fearlessness that you have when you deal with opposing attorneys, even more senior and experienced attorneys who have a lot more deposition experience that you've had, but you seem to be able to stand your ground against almost anybody. And I've always respected that in you. In terms of depositions, can you share with the audience just we hear about depositions all the time, but just so everyone understands what a deposition is, what is a deposition? What's its purpose? And what skills do you think that a litigator needs to possess in order to become a strong deposition taker?
Well, first of all, thank you, Russ, for your kind words. A deposition is a formal legal proceeding where a witness is questioned by an attorney. It's part of the pretrial discovery process. We use depositions to gather facts about our case. We use it to assess the strengths and weaknesses, and it also preserves testimony that may be needed later and things like trial. Handling depositions, especially in our complex medical malpractice cases, involves a variety of skills. I think the most important skills are preparation, knowing your client's case, knowing the medical records, and researching medical terms. And I also think another important skill when conducting depositions is active listening, really paying close attention to the witness's responses to your questions.
And obviously, you've taken a lot of depositions since you became an attorney, haven't you?
Yes.
And certainly, as a deposition taker, would you say that there are certain depositions that are more difficult than others, or are they pretty much all the same, just different faces, maybe different topics?
I think every deposition that I've taken, I learn more and more because you're not going to get the same type of witness or expert that you depose every single time. There's certain areas that you want to question a witness about, and you have to be prepared if you're not going to get the answer that you want. And so I always say I learn from every deposition that I take.
Yeah, and the individuals that we're deposing are sophisticated individuals. I mean, usually they're either doctors or they're academics or they're nurses, and they have a heightened level of expertise and knowledge as it relates to the medicine. And I would think it's important that you get yourself knowledgeable and up to speed with the medicine as you challenge them at the depositions, especially if they're not a friendly witness, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, there's a goal in every deposition that you want to accomplish. And one of the things I've always, liked how you've taken deposition is that you're persistent, right? Because if you're not persistent, they're going to either walk all over you or they're not going to give the answer that you want. Many times you'll ask them a question, they'll answer a question that isn't even responsive to the question that you're asking, and you got to stay on them.
Oh, You're absolutely right, Russ. Yes, you do.
And I've read enough of your transcripts to know that your persistency and dealing with some of the antics of the other lawyers on the other side are things that you're able to sort of like zone out as you try to get to the answers that you want to get to, right?
Yes, that's right.
What do you like most in being a lawyer, especially a lawyer that practices doing complex cases and medical malpractice cases?
I think the most rewarding thing to me being a trial lawyer is obtaining justice for our clients. I think that's the best feeling. Helping people, advocating for people, obtaining justice for people is the most rewarding thing. It's so fulfilling.
And it's, at least for me, the best part is the ending of the case. We're putting closure on someone's life, especially the cases that we handle, which are typically cases that involve either a birth injury, the death of a loved one. And so we get to know the clients really well, right? And in doing that, you're kind of on this roller coaster journey with them throughout the life of the case, which can take several years. And is there a specific case that you have worked on where you really felt good about the job that you did and you got satisfaction really making a difference in somebody's life?
I think a lot of our medical malpractice cases, I feel that way. And I think, especially helping the NFL players in our NFL concussion settlement cases, I think, those truly stick with me as well. These clients, these retired NFL players, it's heartbreaking to see the long-term effects of concussions and brain injuries that they have suffered. Obtaining, it's been incredibly fulfilling to be able to help them and obtain some type of compensation for their neurocognitive disorders that they've been diagnosed with now as a result of the concussions, especially knowing that many of these players weren't adequately informed of the risks of concussions that they sustained in the league.
And now that we're moving into this NFL brain concussion, these clients that we had over the years, if I remember, I pretty much threw you right into the brain concussion lawsuit from the time that you became a lawyer. Just so the audience understands, in case they have never heard of the NFL brain concussion class action, which is actually in federal court in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, can you tell us what is the NFL brain concussion lawsuit? How long has it been going on? And what is the purpose of what the program was set up when it ultimately settled as a class action? We started getting involved with the individual players and trying to file claims for them to seek compensation.
Yeah, so the NFL brain concussion settlement stems from a series of lawsuits filed by retired NFL football players against the league regarding the long-term effects of concussions and chronic traumatic encephalopathy. It started around 2008 is when these series of lawsuits were filed against the league. In 2015, that is when the U.S. District Court approved the settlement, and the settlement aimed to provide compensation to retired NFL football players diagnosed with neurocognitive disorders as a result of the concussions that they sustained playing in the league. And the settlement allows players to file claims for compensation based on their injuries.
And I guess the severity of the injury is what controls how much compensation they will receive, right?
Yes, their diagnoses and age and how many seasons they played. All of those go a factor into how much compensation each player gets.
And what is the process as an attorney that you have to go through in order to try to obtain compensation for each one of these players individually?
Well, the first process was to make sure that the players were registered with the NFL concussion settlement. So we had to register all of our players. And then the next process is setting up medical evaluations with neurologists and neuropsychologists for these players to get examined. And once, they receive a qualifying diagnoses, submitting their claim package with, the requested documentation to the NFL concussion settlement, and hopefully getting it processed through the NFL concussion settlement.
But it's not an easy thing for these guys to qualify. If I remember, the NFL, who was part of the negotiating of this settlement agreement, they really made it difficult for someone to qualify, even if they had some kind of brain impairment. It had to be of a certain severity for them to qualify, right?
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's incredibly unfortunate what's been happening, and the NFL concussion settlement, it made it very difficult for these players to qualify, even if a doctor gives them a qualifying diagnosis, then, that entitles them to compensation. They can still get denied at the claims administrator level.
Out of the 20,000 players that registered, only approximately 4,000 or 20% of the players ever received any compensation from the compensation fund, right?
Yes, the number is incredibly low, and it should be higher. I mean, this has been going on. In 2015, it was approved. People can start submitting claim packages as early as 2016, early 2017. So it's been going on for a number of years, and I anticipated that number to be higher.
Our statistics in our office were higher than the national statistics, if I remember. What do you attribute that to?
I think our firm has been fortunate enough to recover a substantial amount of money for our NFL football players, and I think it's just our diligence and our persistence in getting these players examined and getting the appropriate paperwork filed in a timely manner.
And I think that my numbers reflect that. I think you've recovered probably over $24 million on behalf of some of the players that we've represented over the years, correct?
Yeah, that sounds correct.
Was there a deadline that a player had to either file a claim or be registered?
Yes. So once the registration opened up, there was a deadline that NFL retired football players had to register with the claims administration in order to proceed with the settlement. I believe that deadline was in 2019, and if they did not register in time, then they cannot qualify for the benefits under the NFL concussion settlement.
So, for instance, if a player just retired from the NFL last year and they wanted to make a claim because they started having signs and symptoms of a brain injury because they had a number of concussions over the course of their career, it would be too late for them to make the claim because they were, one, not retired by 2019, and then two, didn't register.
Correct. They had to have retired actually before 2016 and then registered by 2019 a date as well. So there was a couple factors that take into account in order to be part of the settlement.
So using, for instance, Tom Brady as an example, who retired from the NFL last year, if he develops signs and symptoms of brain trauma because of concussions over the years, he would be barred from making a claim because it's beyond the, as we call the statute of limitations of filing a claim, which would have been 2019, right?
Correct. It's too late.
And I guess one of the reasons why they would do that is because over the years, once this case broke open, the secrecy of the NFL, it became known through the medicine that these players that were getting thrown back in games after concussions, they didn't know that by getting additional concussions that they were going to sustain as a permanent brain injury. Is where today, I believe that what the lawsuit did, it actually established a brain concussion protocol where if a player has a concussion, they've got to come out of the game. I believe they're done for the game. And then there's a waiting period and they have to get evaluated by a team doctor and a neurologist in terms of whether their concussion has cleared up enough for them to go back. And also at the same time, they're now on notice that this can happen. And it's really almost as if they're playing more at their own risk of getting a permanent injury, unlike the guys that we've represented who played in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, who this was all unknown to them. They would literally get their head rang, during a game, and they would be out, for maybe a couple plays, and they would get thrown right back into the game. And then he could potentially get another concussion before the first one cleared up, and then it would go on and on and on. And then, as you said, we have these poor clients that we've represented over the years. Some of these guys aren't even that old, and they have cognitive disabilities, right?
Correct. Yeah. If, it's heartbreaking to see the long-term effects of concussions have on these players and the associated injuries from them. Especially as you just said, some of our, clients are very young.
And what are some of the symptoms that they develop that triggers this knowledge that they've got a brain injury as a result of these concussions?
Yeah, so there's a wide range of symptoms that they can have that can be associated with these neurocognitive disorders. In the NFL concussion settlement, the covered disorders are mild impairment, moderate impairment, which can be memory loss, headaches, not interested in hobbies that you were once interested in before, not being able to perform your usual responsibilities at work, and the diagnoses actually get worse from there. Other covered diagnoses under the settlement are Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and ALS. And obviously, we all know those are very significant medical disorders. And lastly is chronic traumatic encephalopathy that the settlement only covers when someone passes away through an autopsy report.
And I think we've actually had some clients that either were diagnosed with Parkinson's or Alzheimer's disease. And that's just very sad, isn't it?
It is very sad.
I know just because, my office is right next to yours. And sometimes on a Monday, a player will call you wanting to know what the status of their case is. And then they call again on Tuesday, they call again on Wednesday, and they call again on Thursday. And they'd forgotten they even called you on the other 3 days.
Yep. Yes, that happens. That happens a lot. And, we always say to our clients that when they do get examined, we would, love to have somebody accompany them to the examinations. Just so, because a lot of these individuals who are married, their spouses become caretakers for them.
It's tough.
It is tough.
What kind of cases do you enjoy the most? And are there any things that you're not doing now that you're looking forward to as time goes on in working on to gain additional skill as an attorney?
Yeah, and every medical malpractice case that I work on, I find just extremely interesting because not every case is the same. We deal with, as you know, a wide range of cases involving birth injury cases, stroke cases, improperly discharged from the hospital. Those are really interesting cases to work on, but also the different areas. I would have never known about the NFL concussion settlement cases or the vaccine injury compensation fund. And once you, as a lawyer, become involved in those cases and do your research and speak to experts, you gather information and it becomes just interesting learning the history around why certain settlements become, class actions. And I find it all very interesting.
Now, you are married to a lawyer.
Yes, I am.
And he also does the same kind of work as you do, right?
He does, yes.
How do the two, and knowing how rigorous a job this is, and knowing how rigorous his job is, how do the two of you manage, especially now that you have a 1-year-old, and it's got to be a little tricky at home where, trying to balance, the stress of our job, and then you've got to go home for your second job, and you've got a husband that does the same thing as you do. And how does this balance work? How's this balance going for you guys?
Yes, my husband and I, we both have demanding careers as attorneys. Like you said, we do the same type of law, and balancing everything with a 1-year-old can be challenging. We prioritize open communication and make a conscious effort to support each other, both personally and professionally. It's about being flexible and working as a team, especially if one of us is on trial or one of us is traveling for an out-of-state deposition. It was really important for both of us, even before starting a family, that we wanted to create a nurturing environment for our children while also pursuing our professional goals of being great attorneys. That was really important for us to have both. And, we've done a pretty good job so far.
Yeah, from what I can tell, you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you, Russ.
What advice would you give a younger lawyer who's recently married, thinking of starting a family, wants to be a trial lawyer? What would you tell them if they asked you, what's it like? And this is going to be difficult, managing a family and doing such a stressful job as being a trial lawyer, handling complex cases, med mal cases, and other different kinds of cases.
Well, I would tell them, yes, it is difficult. But if you love what you do, you can do both. And for me, I'm fulfilled both at home and at work. And I wouldn't have it any other way. And if you really want to do both, it's doable.
I know back in the day when you were in school, you were a big hockey player.
Yes.
And I know your favorite team are the Islanders.
They are.
And you love the Knicks, right?
Yeah, I love Go New York Knicks.
Are you and your husband on the same page in terms of the teams that you like, or is there a little bit of a fight that goes on over the weekend when the games are on?
So my husband's originally from Florida, so he likes most Florida teams, except he has now been converted to a New York Knicks fan, as you know. And so that's fun because we are both New York Knicks fans, so we attend those games together. But baseball, he's still a Florida fan, and hockey, he's still a Florida fan. But he'll support me and go to New York Islander games, and he says that's his second favorite team. So we work it out.
There you go. Kelly, like everything in life, it's time to say goodbye. So I want to thank you for enlightening us regarding your journey, your work, and your personal life. Following your career so far, you've made a difference for many of our clients, and nobody is happier than me that you made the decision to transition to an attorney, as you are a valuable member of our firm.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you for everything you've done, too, to get me here today. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. And thank you for having me today.